or a BBS board, if you guys remember from way back in the day. It's like a forum. It's like their own mini Reddit. And they'll post tasks that they're currently working on. If they have any questions, they'll ask specific people that are responsible for those things. And they'll always just have that stored in their context. So if they, have a question from one person, they can prioritize that question and then go and find it in, their context and immediately reply. In that way, you could save individual agents significant amounts of time. In terms of coordination here, the main agent manages all the work, but with agent teams, it's a shared task list with self-coordination. So just like we had a little Trello board or maybe, a ClickUp task list or something like that, so too do these agents work off the JSON equivalent. They say that subagents are best for focused tasks where only one result matters, whereas agent teams are best for complex work requiring discussion and collaboration. This is just one of those like little marketing isms. The definition between focused task and complex task is very, very fuzzy, and there is no real delineation between them. It's sort of like how there's a certain point at which a hill becomes a mountain, but nobody could tell you exactly how many feet high the hill needs to be or whatever, right? It's just one of those things where when you know, you know. And finally, the token costs of subagents are quite low, relatively speaking, whereas agent teams are very, very high because every teammate is actually a whole separate Claude instance. So when you scale up and spin up a bunch of these, you can use a fair amount of tokens quite quickly. Now, I should note that agent teams are not enabled by default because they're what we call an experimental feature. This may not necessarily be true by the time you're watching, by the way, but for now they are. They have set them to off essentially by default. And so only advanced users really get to peer behind the curtain and use them. The way that you enable them is you edit your settings.json in your current workspace, and you just create this sort of little string. You have this curly brace, you have env, you have Claude code experimental agent teams, you set that to 1, and then you have some closing curly brackets. You don't need to worry too much about that. We'll do that in like 5 seconds. Finally, the cool thing about agent teams, as mentioned, is you can't just, it's not only that you can communicate with the parent agent, you can communicate with all of the agents. So if, you want to context switch and tell agent 3 in the sequence to do something different than it was currently doing, you can absolutely do that really easily. There are 2 different ways to do so. There's what's called in-process mode and then split pane mode, at least as of the time of this recording. One is where you basically just like alt-tab through all of them. The other is where there's just multiple panes, and so you'll see agent 1 over here, you'll see agent 2 over here, agent 3 over here, and then you'll kind of get their feed. I will note, I've done this before, unfortunately, because Claude Code renders your, it's not just like a simple text terminal. Basically, they're like rendering this 2D image constantly on your screen. It can consume a fair amount of compute, so I don't actually like using it that way anymore. I basically always use it in process, but I'll run you through what that looks like if you did want to use split pane mode. And then obligatory agent team tokens cost way more because you're spawning tons of different Claude instances. And every single one has its own context window and can do its own stuff. So if you have like 10 active agents running, you're going to consume about 10 times the context, if not more, because there's also going to be some coordination and communication lag and overhead. So they have some recommendations here. They say use Sonnet for teammates. Keep teams really small because every teammate runs its own context window, so token usage is roughly proportional to team size. Keep the spawn prompts focused. We don't know what those are, so I'll tell you that in a second. Teammates will load their own Claude MD, MCP servers, and skills automatically, but everything in the spawn prompt will also add to their context from the start. Clean up teams when the work is done, so you can actually roll them down or shut them down. And then, agent teams are disabled by default because they don't want anybody blowing $10,000 on agent teams in a day, which you can absolutely do if you're not careful. That's why limits are so important. Okay, so first things first, we have to actually enable agent teams. So I'm just going to jump over here to this URL, and then I'm just going to copy all of the text on this page, and then I'm going to go over to anti-gravity, open that puppy up. And just for the purposes of this example, I'm actually just going to open a new folder. So go to my Mac, and then I'll say agent teams example. Okay, I'm going to open that. And then what I'm going to do is go over to Claude, paste this in, and I'm going to say enable agent teams. I'm going to go bypass permissions, close this puppy out so we can all see it, and maybe bump this out a bit so you guys can always see the text. So it's now added my settings.json here, and it's kind of fixed it. Okay, so this is now good to go, and it's enabled this across my global workspace, so it's not actually even in my file. Let's start with a really simple example of agent team so I could show you the parallelization aspect, and then what we'll do is we'll actually go into an open source code base, and I'll use agent teams to act as both code reviewers and then also debaters to debate between each other until they determine a consensus on how to make the code even better. So our first super simple example is going to be, I'm designing a simple personal website for Nick Sarayev. Generate 3 agents using a team and create 3 fundamentally different designs. Open all 3 once done, and I'll compare, contrast, and give feedback. Also, make sure they know everything there is to know about me. So nobody is waiting on anything. Okay. So I'm using a terminal for this just because the terminal UX is much nicer for agent teams than the GUI UX. I'm sure that'll change at some point. But yeah, I also have fast mode on up here, which is just allowing me to do this a little bit faster. And so as you see, what's occurred is the agent, this parent agent here, Opus 4.6, sort of made the executive decision for its very first task, basically. Oh, that's so cool. I didn't even know I could do this. To do research on Nick. And so after it's done the research, basically, it's now going to spin up, 3 agents, one for site 1, another for site 2, and another for site 3. I really got to figure out how to do this with hotkeys. It's super annoying. And then these 3 agents are going to go working on this thing simultaneously and independently, and then they're going to combine those 3 websites back into, just like we did with subagents, sort of that main thread. But what's cool is, these 3 different agent teams, since they're all individual Claude Code instances, they get to do a variety of different things. They also get to access their own agents, use their own code base, and stuff like that. So what's really cool is we have 3 agents now working in parallel. The first is called Design Minimalist. The second is called Design Dark, and the third is called Design Warm. I asked for fundamentally different types of designs, which is why they're doing this. Now, if you wanted to see all these agents run simultaneously, all you'd have to do is just go Shift up or down. And so right now I'm in the team lead context, but I could actually go down here and then press enter, and now I'm in the Design Dark. As you see here, we got a ton of information here with some context about who Nick Serif is, and then it says you're designing a personal website, create a single self-contained file. It's now creating a bold, dark tech website. We could also go up to the main team lead, and then you could see that it's let me know that the Design Minimalist is done, and it's still waiting on Design Dark and Design Warm to finish their builds. So, how exactly is this different from, subagents right now? Well, it's different from subagents in that you can treat every one of these as basically having its own whole Claude Code instance available to it, okay? Whereas before, every individual subagent only had access to the context that the parent agent gave. Realistically, what I could do is I could add a Claude.md, and all 3 of these would have access to Claude.md, style guides and stuff like that. So I'm going to take a look at this, okay, saying that it's all done now, and it actually shut down all 3 of those agents as well, which is really, really important. If they're constantly running in the background, you're also going to be consuming compute resources just as well as you are tokens. Now I'm going to compare which ones I like more. This one up here is building at the intersection of AI and human ambition. Wow, look at that. That's nice. Jeez, insane. It's got a couple things wrong here. Definitely have more than 150K YouTube subs, but what are you going to do? Looks like it does have my links, which is kind of cool. This is dark coding one. Look at that. Isn't that neat? And this one over here is very interesting. There's no picture of me on it, but hey, what are you going to do? As my little nightclub promotions party business. That's a hell of a throwback. And what happens if I click this? Okay, cool. We go back to our YouTube. That's really exciting. So I don't know, maybe I really like the first one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, hey, I really liked the warm narrative option. Looks great. I'd like you now to spin up 3 more agents. I then want you guys to do research on effective design principles and copywriting principles that convert. Once done, I want you to spin up a bunch of agents to iterate on this design and come up with their own flavors or versions, then report back to me. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking, this winning design here, the warm one. It's going to take this warm, beautiful thing, and then I basically wanted to iterate on it even more. And as you saw, this occurred pretty quickly, right? This took me maybe 2 minutes or so. Is it perfect? No, but because it's not perfect, I basically just want to have Claude do a bunch of iterations on it and then give me what I consider to be an even better version, which I think it can do pretty quick. So it's going to spin up a bunch more. We have research copy, research design, and research examples. This is a good, actual use case here. It's doing 3 research agents in parallel. We have one that's figuring out strong design principles based off of, winning combinations. There's another that's doing some copywriting fundamentals. And then the third that is looking for high quality creator sites. So Ali Abdal, guy that I like, Hormozy, obviously, Danco, these guys are perfect, more or less exactly what I'm looking for. So it's going to go do a bunch of research on them. And then it's going to incorporate that in presumably some other type of designer. I could see the status by going Shift up and down. So this person here, research copy, it's looking up, best hero copy formulas, personal brand, scannable web copy best practices, David Ogilvy copywriting principles, headlines that work, right? If I go down here to research examples, this agent is now writing up a bunch of high quality website styles. It's then analyzing the websites and, giving me all of the copy and stuff like that. Presumably it's going to integrate this into something nice. Then if I go back up to the team lead, then I can see that it's, basically just waiting on all three of these to finish. What's cool is these three all have their own token usages, as you see here. So 53,000, this one here is 56,000, this one here is 50,000. When they finish, it then says idle, and it tells you how many seconds that the agent is idle. This is, mildly useful. Obviously, not utilizing your Claude agents is one of like the biggest issues with them. So what this thing is going to do is basically wait for these other two to finish, and then if these other two don't finish after a certain amount of time, it'll actually just wind down the research design agent to stop consuming my compute and stuff. Probably the research examples is going to take the longest time, just because I think that that's like less of a clear-cut definition of done, but we'll see. And then what's really nice is these are cheaper models, right? 58,000 tokens on the cheaper model, 56,000 tokens on the cheaper model, then only 2,000 tokens on the most expensive model. And so we haven't actually integrated all of that stuff back into the main yet. But as these finish, they will eventually, take all of their tokens and then bring them back in. And so this token count will increase significantly. Okay, now that all three of these are done, we've collapsed these three agents into the team lead. Now we have these big design principles doc, research copywriting doc, research site example doc. And because I've empowered the team lead to be able to spin up new agents based off of, various things like the conversion rate, the copy, the creative, and the style, it's now generating new ones. So there's an iterate dark, iterate conversion. I don't know how many of these it's going to spin up, but it's definitely going to spin up some. In the meantime, we also have these really dense research summaries, so I can actually open this research design principles doc. If I just scroll down a bit so you can see, we now have things like there's a Z pattern layout. Since the eye starts in the top left and moves to the top right, your nav and CTA should be at particular places. There's also an F pattern layout and different actionable recommendations on color psychology and so on and so forth. I mean, this is a tremendous amount of text. Is this the most efficient way to get all this across? Probably not. But because these models just think so much quicker than we do at this point, we don't really need it to be as efficient. We can actually just throw a tremendous amount of text at a prompt and it can actually do a pretty good job. What I really like about this is it took key inspirations from different people. So in this case, Justin Welch's Upside Down homepage. I really like Justin Welch, so that's great. Dan Coe and Sahil Bloom's Dark Premium, Bold Typography Origin Story is some sort of cinematic centerpiece. It's taken inspiration from all these different people, then it's combining them with slightly different copywriting directions to create things that are ultimately new and presumably going to be quite different. And, I think a lot of people rag on agents and AI is not really being creative. But what is creativity if not just combining things over and over and over again in a million different combinations? I'd wager most things that you probably consider to be creative are things that whose pre-existing pieces and principles existed before, and AI just combined them into something that maybe hadn't really been put together in that way. There are certain sentences that have never been said before or written before. You could be the first to write one. Some of them are quite creative. Okay, and we are done. So the first site here is I help aspiring AI entrepreneurs build their first 25K month automation agency. I like this. This is really clean. That's actually quite the value prop. We do have an issue with the button, obviously. So the thing is, this model was not given the ability to screenshot. I bet you if I did, that would have been pretty straightforward. So this is a good opportunity for me to update the Claude.md and say, hey, you can do some screenshots. Still, this looks really great. Step 1, watch the free training. Step 2, join Maker School. Step 3, build your agency. I mean, honestly, the fact that this is just a couple of minutes, this is so much better than what I could have done in an equivalent amount of time. It's not even funny. And not only did I generate one, I generated 3. So now I have a dark one, right? That's pretty clean. I like that. This must be the Dan Coe one. There has to be a faster way to matter. Ooh, that's clean, right? Again, it's taken that main website and then it's iterated on it based off of different styles and different approaches, which is more or less exactly what you do in any sort of copywriting and so on and so forth. So I really like this one. I mean, this one to me is probably my favorite. You want to build an AI automation business, but you don't know where to start. I really, really like that. So I think I'm actually going to take that. Great work. Build in screenshot functionality. Because you don't have the ability to screenshot, a couple things stand out. Also get pictures of me to put on the site. Let's choose the first one, which is the conversion machine. I think it's the conversion machine, right? Yep. Also, we need to update some stats. We have 2,100 or 2,200 people in Maker School right now. You can check that out just